So please help me in welcoming Representative Joe Cunningham.
Thank you. Wow, this is an honor and a privilege. I want to first of all thank Sarah and Christy for what they are doing here and putting this whole thing together. It's really fantastic, and I'm honored to be here. I want to also give a shout out to Josh Capender, who's I think up there in the booth. Josh is a graphic designer in town. He did our logo. I don't know if it's up there. Sorry, Josh, it's not up there. But it is fantastic, though. He does great work. You've probably seen a lot of his stuff around town. So I want to say thanks again for everyone who came out and who's dodging work this morning or going in late to come in and hear kind of my story of and how I fit lost into. What's up, KJ? I tell you what, I'm gonna sit down right here if it's okay, because I feel like this is I feel like I can talk more, be on y'all's level here. And what I'm going to share with you all this morning, and I brought note cards in case I forget things about my own life. What I'm going to share with you all is a little bit more intimate, a little bit more personal. And so I just want to have this more intimate setting. You all have seen those pictures where it's got the glacier and it says success or whatever, what people see. And they see, the mountain or the glacier and everything. And then they say you see below the waterline what people don't see, all the failures and all the, missed opportunities or missed shots and all those things that led up to build up that whole successful glacier. Well, that stuff below the waterline is important, and it's the shit that people usually don't talk about either. But it's oftentimes the most important, and oftentimes provides a foundation for who you become and who you are. So. That's kind of the setting in which I want to speak to you this morning about. And, I want to talk to you all about a period in my life where I kind of wandered in the wilderness. I felt lost, and kind of how I was able to come out of that and my mindset as I did come out of it. I grew up in Western Kentucky, a very rural area, and youngest of 5 brothers. And we used to vacation in South Carolina. So when we started vacationing down here, immediately I was like, I need to be down here going to college. Or I need to be enrolled in college. I wasn't too keen on going to college, but I need to be enrolled in college. And so I came down here and I started studying. I was studying here for a couple of years until I realized I wanted to do engineering. I was decent at math, and I knew I wanted to work on the water. I had a strong passion for it, loved being on the beach or on the boat. And so I found a school down in Boca Raton called Florida Atlantic University that had an ocean engineering program. And so I enrolled in that, got in there, started up, ultimately got my degree in ocean engineering, and got a great opportunity for a job across the coast in Naples, Florida, which is on the southwest coast. Anybody ever been to Naples? Okay. I'm sure you have grandparents that live there, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's an older retirement community. It's newlyweds and nearly deads, as they say. And so I went over there, and I had a great job, working as the only ocean engineer underneath the owner of the company, who was an ocean engineer as well. And I got my license to fly down there. We did a lot of work in the Bahamas, so we'd fly over to the Bahamas. We'd work with developers and building marinas. So I'd be diving with marine biologists, going out into the woods and into the Everglades with ecologists and biologists, and just working outside and making a good living and living in a beautiful setting down there. Then 2008 happened, and that's when things started to go south with the recession. And I look around in the room here, and many of you all are probably too young to have gone through that. Some of you were in it. John, I know you remember it. I remember it. And so I remember coming into work one day, and I was, like I said, I was right underneath the owner of the company as far as the second engineer there, and I could see the writing on the wall over the work kind of slowing down. And so anyway, I got the news I was laid off, and I remember coming back home. I had a two bedroom house there in Naples, and I was devastated, just devastated. And if you've ever been laid off, you kind of, it's just a little bit, it's a rejection. And so I went through, a dark period there where I was struggling to find out what I wanted to do. And I remember the first couple of days, my parents would be like, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'm probably going to drink tonight. I'm probably going to drink tomorrow too. And then after a few days there in Naples, I decided, well, I want to come back to Charleston. And I didn't have a job. And so when you come back to Charleston, you kind of, I was relying on family. I was looking around. I had a brother, Luke, who was living here, and he was playing in bars and restaurants, and he's a musician. And so I'd be sleeping on his couch for like the first few weeks when I was back in town, while continuing to kind of interview for other jobs. And I would be interviewing for project engineers, project managers. I remember driving up to Norfolk, Virginia, like in the dead of winter, and getting up there and making it through the interviewing process. And I remember looking around thinking, coming from Charleston up to Norfolk, I'm like, I don't want to live here. I can't see myself, and so, but I found myself, like, each one of these interviews I'd go on, and some of these I'd be getting offers on, I'd be like, I don't know. I felt like my heart wasn't in it. And it was a conflict, because when you're going through this period, and some of you all may have been in this situation before, I had invested, 5 years education. I was a super senior. 5 years of education, plus another 5 years of working in the engineering field. It had an established role, and felt like, this is where I need to be. And my family and friends would remind me of that too. And sometimes family, they love big, but they don't love smart, And y'all are getting ready to see it too when you go back home for Thanksgiving, I'm sure. That's when all the opinions come out of what you should be doing, what you can be doing, and why aren't you doing this? So. But I get this feedback from family and friends saying, no, as my heart was pulling me away from engineering, my family and friends be trying to push me back into it and just say, like, no, you had such a good job, there's plenty of other opportunity, you'll find something, stay in this field. But I could tell myself I was becoming more and more detached from it. And I remember I had a job interview here in Charleston, but the job was for, now get this, the job was for a project engineer for a low-level radioactive dump in southern Texas. And so I remember sitting in the chair, and they're explaining it to me, and it was a good-paying job, and which is why I was there. But I remember sitting there, and they're like, yeah, anyone know what low-level radioactive material is? It's like the drywall in the dentist office that the X-ray machine hits, and because it's exposed, that it has to be disposed of properly in a proper dump. So he was explaining to me what would be disposed, and how you'd have to get body scans every time I left the job site to figure out if there's any radioactivity. And I'm like, oh, geez, this sounds pretty bad. But that was kind of that was kind of a turning point in me, realizing that, like, I didn't really want to do this, but these, I guess, opportunities, if you've ever been in transition in between jobs, it also gives you a deep sense of reflection. And you recognize that life is too short. And that's the first point I got 3 points, because I'm a big fan of saying things in threes. But the first point I want to make is, at the end of the day, no one else's opinion matters but your own. And, when it all comes down to it, you're going to have to answer to that person who's staring back at you above the bathroom sink. And, I think when I was younger, I had this need to kind of, try to please everybody, make everybody happy. And if you find yourself doing that for too long, you lose a little bit of yourself in the process too. You're going to be with yourself a hell of a lot longer than you are with anyone else. And so you need to make sure that you satisfy yourself first, and you're happy with what you're doing and your passion, your job. And it took a little while for me to realize that. And I was, while going through the interviewing process, I took a break and went down to South America to learn Spanish, because that was something that I'd always wanted to do. And I didn't have a family, I didn't have a wife at the time, and I had the opportunity to do that. So I went down to South America and lived for a few months, and that's when I got the idea that I didn't want to work with concrete and steel anymore. I wanted to work with people, and I wanted to have more of a tangible impact on people's lives. And it was kind of me growing up in a family of law, like my father was an attorney, then a circuit court judge, and then a Supreme Court justice, and I'd seen the things that he was able to do by working in the field of law and having more personal touch. So that's what I wanted to do, and that took a while to get there, to realize that the engineering was not my passion anymore, and to push other people's thoughts away from me, and to do what I really wanted to do. And it wasn't, so, and the second point I want to make is there's not always going to be a burning bush for you, and saying like this is the way in which you need to go. I went through a lot of self-reflection, and I went through months and months of kind of looking inside myself and realizing that I wasn't passionate about this anymore. I wanted to go in a different direction, and it took me all the way down to South America. It took me learning Spanish, gave me a lot of other different experiences which I could reflect upon. But I remember looking back when I came to college at Charleston. I had friends and colleagues who said, "Okay," they're like, "My plan is to be an attorney by age 25, have my own law firm by 27, have kids by 29, have a wife." But they lay out everything. You all have friends like that, I'm sure, who said have this whole grand plan of 5-year increments, and which is good for them. But the fact is, it doesn't always work out that way. And you probably know some of them who may have gotten off track, and because life has a way of changing things. Life has a way of closing certain doors, and sometimes that can be your guiding light. There's not always going to be a North Star or a doorway that says walk through here. Sometimes you get to places by eliminating other opportunities and eliminating things you don't want to do, and kind of like a differential diagnosis. When you go through, a doctor goes through and eliminates all the things that are not the cause to get to determining what the actual cause is. So it took me, like I said, it took me a while to get to that point, to realize that I wanted to work with people and I wanted to have an impact on people, and that's going back to, like I said, realizing that it just won't always be crystal clear for you. And the last thing I want to say about that is that what gets you through that point, what got me through that point, at least I should say, is faith and patience. And patience is always something that I've struggled with personally. I think I look around the room, I'm sure I see a lot of overachievers, and that can be a characteristic of overachievers, is not having patience, realizing that, well, I do all this stuff before 10 a.m. Why isn't the person answering my emails? Why aren't they getting back to me? And sometimes you have to have a little bit of patience in order to come through these periods of being lost or wondering. And we hear stories about people getting lost in the woods and becoming more lost. And sometimes their situation of losing their own direction is compounded, is made worse by the lack of patience. They'll get lost, at the end of the day as the sun's going down, and instead of staying put through the night, they decide to wander on a little bit more, and get even further lost. Instead of having the patience to recognize that the sun will be up in a few hours, it'll tell me where east is, and it'll light the way out of the woods. But having that patience and having that faith, I feel was enabled me to take the time necessary to do some reflection, and recognize that like I said, that there's not always a blasting sign showing the way, but that sometimes it takes a little faith, and sometimes it takes a little patience, and sometimes it takes trials and tribulations too. Like I said, it's those things underneath the glacier that people don't see. And I think there's a stigma about this being lost. I think there's a stigma about failures that in our society that stops people from doing exactly what I'm doing right now, sharing these things with you, because you don't see all the things underneath the water. I've got a quote from Steve Jobs. Talks about when he was fired, he said, "I didn't see it then, but it turned out that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. The heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again, less sure about everything. It freed me to enter one of the most creative periods of my life. And I'm no Steve Jobs, but I share his sentiment, recognizing that each time in my life that I felt held back, that I felt like I was pulled back, it was simply because it was preparing me to launch forward. And so, and it's hard as hell to see that too when you're in the midst of it. And it's you probably don't like people saying that to you either. I never liked hearing it. Just wait. It doesn't make the situation any better, but it's true. And that's what it comes down to: having that faith and having that patience. To simply wait and recognize that sometimes you're getting to your end goal by eliminating other decisions and eliminating other options, that you are making forward steps, even though it's difficult to see it at the time. As I said, first and foremost, some of you all are probably in a position right now where you may be in between jobs, or you may be in a job that you're not 100% happy with. And you may have a side hustle or a side gig that you're working on to launch, and I can tell you, go for it, and use that faith to take a step off the ledge. And that, I'm not going to talk about our race or politics, because that would be another discussion altogether. But I remember getting into this world of politics. It was a matter of taking a step off the ledge, and expecting that people would support my ideas, my values, and share the same thing. But the same thing applies to whatever endeavor you all are going through right now, as to whether or not to put your time and energy into something that you feel like your passion is. Just follow your heart, because we need more people like that in the world. And because at the end of the day, like I said, you just have to answer yourself. And if you find yourself working decade after decade for other people, the quote that comes to mind is, you can either build your dreams, or someone will pay you to build theirs for them. And to me, that resonates a lot. And that's not saying that working for other people is bad or anything, but it's saying that you have to be happy doing what you're doing and feel like it's your dream job. And another quote, what people had always said to me, which was, if you enjoy what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. I always wanted to punch these people in the throat when they said that to me. Because I'm like, work is work, and yeah, I mean, work is going to be uncomfortable at times. But I didn't really fully appreciate that until I stepped into this role in my current job right now, and recognizing every single day I get up, I'm excited about what I'm doing, and I don't consider it it work at all, because I enjoy it so much. So when you look back in life, you obviously don't want to have any regrets, and I'm a big fan of quotes, if you can't tell. But I can't remember who it was that said it's better to regret the things you did than regret the things you didn't do. And I think at the end of it all, we all want to look back with as few regrets as possible. And like I said, recognizing that there will never be just a clear North Star, or not always. Sometimes there is. Some people are lucky to have that kind of direction. I wasn't. But recognizing that you can make progress by deciding what you're not passionate about as well. And I think by growing and being mature, you kind of utilize that faith and that patience to determine that just being somewhere, waiting for the sun to come up, or waiting for the light to get brighter, is a step in the right direction and will open up some options. So those are the things I wanted to share with you all this morning. I didn't want to talk too much. I wanted to kind of open up the questions and hear what you all had to say, and hopefully kind of share some of whatever insight that I can offer as to that period in my time and how that propelled me into where I am today. So thank you so much for sharing your time here.
sitting. If you all have a question and you just want to raise your hand and shout it out, that's good with us. Who wants to go first? Okay, I'll ask you a question. So you have a young family, and you and your wife both do a lot of things. I watch you on social media. Your wife's traveling all over and doing good. How do you find balance in your life as parents and for each other?
Yeah, I don't. No, it's a great question. It's how do you balance your passion and your work? And I think it's recognizing that I've always tried to prioritize family time and creating boundaries and recognizing that that there's my family's going to be around for a long time, and these relationships are important, and prioritizing and as my son gets a little bit older, he's almost 2. I can't wait till he turns 2 so I can stop counting in months. He's like 20 months, and then he's 21 months, and so. But each week I go up to DC and I come back, I recognize something different that's changed with him because he's at that age where he's moving his little body different, or he's saying different words, and these times are special, and it's easy to get, especially with social media and everything, it's easy to get consumed into feeling guilty for not doing certain things with your spare time. But it's also about prioritizing, when you're home and your time with your family, and because to me, that's what keeps me grounded as well. I mean, I'm sure it would be easy to develop some type of ego being up in Washington, D.C., but there's my wife to keep me grounded, to tell me to take out the trash when I get home, even after passing legislation. Oh, that's great. Trash needs taken out. So I mean, that balance kind of helps me remain grounded too, I feel. This is not a shy crowd either, I guarantee it. I think there's a misconception on how media and social media expect people to portray, and even like when I was an attorney, I remember seeing see all the TV shows and the movies about how the most aggressive attorneys and the mean ones, the ones who'd say vile things to each other, like those are the ones who won the big settlements. Those are the ones who were very successful. When the truth is, in practice, what I saw was. I remember getting a note from Ed Westbrook, attorney in town. His son started up a brewery here in town. Y'all may know him better, but a note in the mail from Ed Westbrook saying how nice it was trying to, having the case against us. And we lost the case, and he won, but he was a gentleman about it. And these are some of the things that it's made Ed very successful, and I think it makes other people successful as well, is being real, being genuine, and being kind as well. And I think specifically where we are here in this part of the country, in South Carolina, and specifically the Low Country, these are a lot of values that people have. And I didn't get out there and just promise everybody the world, things I knew I couldn't deliver on. But I think you can just be genuine with people, and if you don't know the answer, say you don't know, but say you can try to get back to them. And if you disagree on one issue, I think it's important to realize that there's a lot of other things that we can agree on, we can work together on. And I tell people, just because we don't agree on one thing doesn't mean we can't work together on anything. And and I think in today's day and age with social media and keyboard warriors, people say the most awful things online. They would never say them to your face. But I think that being kind and being genuine, I think, are ways to stand out, and it just fosters a better connection with people as well. And when they realize that you put your shoes on one foot at a time, just the same as anyone else.
Certain OK boomers of my acquaintance told me that yesterday they talked
I think, yeah, I was over there yesterday, and I was at a senior center over Mount Pleasant, and I was talking about HR3, a bill coming up, and I was trying to remember all the points in HR3, all the key points, and I spaced for a second. I'm like, I'm having a senior moment, and and as soon as that come out, I'm like, oh man. I think these folks I saw yesterday. I mean, they're my parents' age, they're younger than my grandparents. These you look at folks that are just the same as your family or your friends, and talking about what the issues they're going through, and in a way, some of the things that they were dealing with. High cost of prescription drugs is some of the stuff that I deal with as well, and that you all deal with. And so I think that empathy, if it's genuine, comes through a lot, and I think some people try to fake that. I think people are smart and they sniff it out pretty quickly. But if you have empathy and sympathy, and there's a difference, I think that shines through as well, I just think it fosters a connection between people as well. I don't know if I want to get into have a responsibility of calling on people and judging everyone who's.
Over there in the back.
Everybody hear the question? So the timing of deciding to run, I think it was a matter of seeing how, for that reason, exactly, for that reason, the fact that it was becoming so polarizing. And I'd seen my father offer himself for public service and the good that can be done, and recognizing that these loud voices on TV, and we see it on the far left, on the far right, and it's not a good representation of most of America, which is somewhere near the middle, so maybe a little bit to the left on certain issues or to the right on certain issues. But the fact that it had become so divisive and so nasty was the very same reason why I wanted to get in there and do something. And it was before we had my son jumping in there, and we worked for months on this big rollout. We did a launch video and put a lot of work and time into it, and we did our rollout like June, 17th, 2017 or something. The very next day, we woke up, my wife was sick, and she took a pregnancy test and found out she was pregnant. And so I think that provided even more fuel for the fire. It's like, listen, you want to look back, and like I said earlier, every one of us will have to answer to someone or something later on in life. Specifically, we're going to have to answer to ourselves. And when you have children, I think you have to answer to them as well, as to what you did in these pivotal times, what you did with your life, and whether or not you fulfilled your own passion and your own dreams. And I think we all want to have a good answer. And so I thought a lot about that whenever I was deciding how best to serve our community and our state and our country, and how I could best utilize the talents that I had and making a difference.
Jay in the back.
Yeah, so could you maybe talk about the funding Charleston has received for the Ashley River Bike Bridge and maybe the role that you had in that?
Hell yeah, I can. Yeah, hey, this is big. So we just secured a build grant for a little bit over $18 million for a pedestrian bridge. It's going to connect downtown Charleston to West Ashley, and we had a press conference about it yesterday. This is something that I've been supporting for a long time. It's something we wrote letters on. Our staff has been in communication with the Department of Transportation. These build grants this is like the third or fourth year it was submitted. It had always been rejected, but try again. And this year we're able to bring it home. And so this is just such huge news for pedestrians, for cyclists, anybody who wants to commute to work downtown now has. I mean, we've all been driving over the Ashley River Bridge and see that like that sidewalk that's as wide as like a diving board, and like when you're driving by people, like you get nervous. I remember seeing my dad walk over. I'm like, Dad, don't do that. But it's a matter of public safety. It's a matter of getting people out of their cars. And we live in a beautiful city with beautiful weather, nearly year round. And it's going to eliminate congestion. It's going to do a lot of good things. And it's that missing link of the greenway that was disconnected. So this is going to transform Charleston. It really is, because we do have I live in West Ashley, and you have to drive downtown, and by allowing this beautiful bridge crossing over the Ashley River that's solely dedicated to cyclists and pedestrians, is just going to be transformative for our community, and it's going to take a great city and make it even better.
Kind of relating to the theme, inevitably, I'm sure in your life there's been some time when people disagreed, and you were surrounded by people who disagreed, and maybe you felt like you were making progress. Like, what do you do in these times to keep yourself motivated, to keep track, or keep going?
Yeah, I get yelled at a bit, so from time to time, and like I said, recognizing that people are often products of the information they receive and the news that they receive and what they watch, and that dictates people having opinions that may not necessarily line up with us. But I think the having the ability and the understanding to listen to each other and find out why they think the way they think and really dig down to the root of it, I think enables us to kind of have a level understanding of people. And like I said earlier, just because we don't agree on one single issue doesn't mean that we can't work together on other issues. And oftentimes, if I'm in a situation where someone is solely talking about one issue, and I recognize that we're not going to see eye to eye on it, what else is important to you? Maybe we can find something. Maybe we can work on something that that we have a better understanding of. But and this is going back to social media and keyboard warriors. We live in a world where people feel like they can say certain things online that are rude, and it causes a breakdown in conversation. But getting over that and having the patience to get over that and recognize that that there are other things we can't agree on that we can work on. And these are all neighbors. These are people that you probably share a lot of similarities with, aside from a couple of different viewpoints. So recognizing that and having the empathy and having the understanding of that, I think, allows us to bridge those gaps.
We have time for two more. So obviously in your role, you're under a lot of pressure and stress. How do you, from a mental health standpoint, find time to stay at peace and prioritize staying calm under pressure, especially in an environment now more than ever when anxiety is so high?
I think, my background, I talk about faith and patience and whether or not you're spiritual or religious. You have to be, I think you need to find something that you can lean on that's stronger than yourself. And for me as a Christian, I often go to that, and I go to a lot of like self-reflection and try to, and it's tough, try to get some time to yourself where you can actually be alone with your thoughts and either read or write or do something that kind of gives you a break from it all, because it can just become more and more intense. But that's you time, and that's taking care of your own mental health and your own personal health. And I remember I think my dad explained it to me as life is like a three-legged stool, and there's your mental health, and along with your physical health, and along with your spirituality, just making sure that that stool is stable and that you have a balance. And oftentimes I think that's what people suffer from, is a lack of balance in their life, because they give so much up to other people, but they don't take the time to come back home and recharge. And you have to do that in order to be at your best, I feel, especially in in stressful times and circumstances.
Do you have any advice on how to break into a new career path from the one that you're on, especially when somebody looks at your current experience and doesn't necessarily feel relevant?
Yeah, I mean when I started to go into this, I started deciding whether or not to run or what to run, how to go about it. I'm big on getting the advice of other people. I'd seek out those leaders in the industry or those people, and you'd be surprised how receptive folks are to want to give advice. Exhibit A up here, right? Seeking out those people who you admire or you feel have been very successful, and not just in their field but in life in general, and ask to grab a cup of coffee. Say I'd like for 15 minutes, pick your brain, and that's what I started to do. I reached out to Mayor Joe Riley. I reached out to Senator Marlon Kempson. I reached out to a lot of folks in the area who are local leaders, and said, number one, what did you do and what did you learn? Because oftentimes, like I said, we all want to talk about our successes when you can learn so much more from people's mistakes, and try to be honest about the mistakes that people make. And then ask them, who else should you talk to? If you were me, who else would you talk to? And you can learn a lot from there. And that can start like a snowball effect into getting all the tools and all the resources. Because in an incredible city like Charleston, you have so many cool groups like this one, like all the ones in town that have different angles to it, and you may learn something that you had no idea existed. And you can only do that by seeking out those people with the experience and learning from them, I feel.